Okay.
Okay.
We have the recording on.
Yes.
Okay, I have 8 o'clock.
Okay, I think, yeah, we're few seconds early, but we can start since this recording got us started. Go ahead.
Welcome to our February 24th session of Fireside Chat Sessions on Shin Buddhism in the West and beyond. Our topic today is daily lives. How do our lives change through a Shin Buddhist way of life? It is so good to see everybody again. My name is Anita Kazarian. I'm one member of the steering committee that brings you this program. And a few items of importance before we start the fireside chat tonight. Take a moment to see how your name appears on the screen next to your image. Your last name should be there, followed by your first name. If it's not, you can easily change it if you wish. Just put the cursor on the top right corner of your image. You'll see 3 horizontal dots. If you click on it, then what you'll have is an option to change your name. If it's complicated, don't bother. It's okay. We'll find you, but as long as we have a name for you. Also, a questionnaire link has been sent to you. Please do your best to send in your comments and your observations within the next 2 weeks. Also, this is an informal fireside chat, but it's important to keep your video on so that we can share the session with one another in person, even though it's a virtual in person. Also, responses to the January class have been uploaded to the January class folder, and it's on the course website. The responses, again, are really wide-ranging, and some of them are really unexpected. But together, we can see how each of us understands the teachings. Finally, if you'll not be able to make our last session next month in March, please send an email ahead of time. We would appreciate that. And now it is my pleasure to introduce Dr. Ken Tanaka, who will be serving as our instructor and our discussion leader for our sessions. Dr. Tanaka, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Anita, and hello, everyone. So we are, this is our 6th meeting of this session this year. And by the way, we have not sent you the questions for this month yet. We've been kind of delayed, but you'll get it with your recording information right after this class. So we'd like to start. And today we have Hilal Tamrat as representing the lay people, and Reverend John Del Bagno representing the clergy. So we're going to start with Hilal. So Hilal with us today wearing the beautiful the dress. Maybe you can say a little bit about that for those who came in late, and then do about 5 minutes of introducing yourself. So can we give Hilal a kind of round of applause? Gives her kind of a confidence. Although she doesn't probably need confidence as well. So
thank you, Tanaka Sensei, for this invitation. And I want to say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I know people are in different time zones around the world, and it's great to see everyone today. So yes, I am wearing a traditional Ethiopian dress. We call it Abesha lips, and my sister was in Ethiopia, and she brought it for me last month, and this is my first time wearing it. And I'm also wearing a traditional, it's a coffee pot. I don't know if you guys can see it.
Oh.
It has the shape of a coffee pot. It's called jabana, and the earrings and ring also match it. It's a traditional jewelry set, and I'm wearing this in honor of coffee, which was discovered in Ethiopia. So that's another fun fact to share with you guys. I'm very proud Ethiopian, so I'm just showing my culture as I present to you today. So my name is Hilal Taddasa Tamrat, and I was born and raised in Ethiopia and have been living in Chicago for the past 25 years, or I should say 25 winters. I am now 44 years old, and I have lived in America longer than Ethiopia. So it's fair to say that I consider myself a true Chicagoan now. I came to the US at the age of 19 when my father won the lottery. He hit the jackpot, the green card lottery. And there's a chance of 0.7% of being selected. So it's a highly coveted lottery. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. It was established in 1990, and they hand out 50,000 green card visas to countries that are underrepresented in the US. They basically do this to hopefully diversify the workforce. So I grew up Orthodox Christian. My father grew up in his father's church, who my father's father was a priest, and he owned his own church. So my father was an altar boy, and he later went to the monastery to study to be a priest and take over his father's church eventually. And my father's highest aspiration was to study modern education, to leave the monastery and study that. So he eventually got the permission of his father to leave the monastery and follow his own path. And he later on went to the University of London, got his PhD, and became a historian and scholar. My mother was a devoted Orthodox Christian, and she took me to church with her some Sundays when I agreed to go with her, which wasn't too many Sundays. So neither of my parents pushed us to go to church or to practice Christianity. They kind of left it to us to join them when they wanted to go to church, which I didn't always join. I would love going on Good Friday because all my friends and neighbors would go, all the kids would be there, and we would go do prostrations at the church. So that was, for me, that was like a fun event, but I never really practiced Christianity. And that got me in trouble, actually, because when the priests would come to our house on Sundays, they would do their Sunday rounds to come over. Sometimes they'll collect funds. Sometimes they'll just come say hi. They sit down and have drinks. So when they would come over, the priest would always ask for me. He would say, "Where's the little one? Call the little one." And he would have holy water, a handful of holy water, and he would splash that on my face each time he saw me, like, "You're a sinner. We don't see you at church." He was like, "Let's, absolve you of your sins." So he would always do that. And I would try to hide whenever they would come over, but it was not possible because I was the one who was usually serving the tea and the snacks to them. And sometimes whiskey, because yes, our priests were allowed to drink, just like Jodo Shinshu, ministers and priests were allowed to drink. So we have that in common. And another fun fact that is similar actually with Jodo Shinshu is that when Christianity was established in Ethiopia, in the kingdom of Aksum in the early 300s AD, the reigning king was called Ella Amida. It's like Amida Buddha, Ella Amida. I thought that was brilliant. I was reading my father's book recently, and I just fell onto that fact. I never really knew that. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Now, let me answer the question that all of you are very curious about. How did an Ethiopian Orthodox Christian end up at a Japanese Buddhist temple in Chicago? So this all started during the pandemic in August of 2021, after meditating alone at home for 1 year while I was on my horizontal dimension of suffering and pain. And after studying Buddhism at Harvard online, because they had free courses online at Harvard. So I took comparative religions, I took Buddhism, I took Hinduism. I was studying at home, but it was too academic for me. I needed to practice it. So I found myself needing a Sangha. So I started searching for a temple near me, and I found the Buddhist Temple of Chicago's Facebook page. And I don't have any social media. I don't have a Facebook account. So all I can do is look at the information. And I saw a flyer that Reverend Patty had posted. It said Introduction to Buddhism course, and it had her email at the bottom. So immediately I emailed her and I said, I'm Christian. My name is Hilal. I would like to take. full by now. Can I please get a seat? So she responded right away, which was made me very happy. She was very kind, and she told me I can take her class. And I went to the Buddhist Temple of Chicago website. I bought my own service book and I started reading the service book. I didn't know what it was talking about, but I was just so excited to start practicing. And on Saturday, August 28th of 2021, I went to attend my first class of Buddhism with Reverend Patty. She welcomed me in with open arms and I immediately felt at home. And the following day, Sunday, August 29th, 2021, I attended my first service and I never left. I have been going every Sunday since, so they haven't been able to get rid of me yet. It's been 2.5 years. So that's how I ended up finding the temple. And I immediately felt welcomed when I went for my first service. Gary was there, Glenn was there. They put me to work right away. I felt like part of the Sangha. They gave me this gadget to check people's temperatures because it was during COVID. So I was checking people's temperatures and welcoming them in, showing them where the restroom is and, telling them to pick up a service book. And I hadn't even attended my first service yet. So that to me, especially for, an immigrant Black woman in America to be welcomed with open arms like that, I really appreciated that. And I'm deeply grateful that I picked BTC as my first temple to walk through and make my own. And for having Reverend Patty Nakai as my teacher for the past 2 years before she retired. I'm very grateful for the rest of the Sangha at the Buddhist Temple of Chicago for helping me learn the Dharma and apply the Dharma and being patient with me. And today I got a precious gift because I was able to attend Reverend Patty's teachings. She had a seminar today at the Higashi Onganji Temple in California. So she gave a seminar on the basics of Jodo Shinshu. So that was a nice little medicine I received today for about 2 hours before coming here. So in the past couple of years, I've attended online seminars and classes I can get my hands on. I've attended Tanaka Sensei's courses last year as well. And I've really tried to deep dive into Buddhism and learn as much as I can. I'm really, really new to this. And I help out with service at the temple on Sundays. And also was in the choir. Reverend Patty trained me to be in the choir. And I do the chanting during Sunday service and some of the ministerial parts as well. So I sometimes ring the kanshou bell or I serve as the chairperson or help out wherever it's needed. When I am not at the temple, I work in finance and I love my Excel spreadsheets. I am very attached to them, and that is one attachment I do not think I could ever let go of. That is my introduction.
Okay, thank you, Hilal. Very interesting. I wanted to ask you some questions, but we don't have as much time now, so I'm gonna go dive right into the question. The first question: how do our lives change through Shin Buddhist way of life? So again, for all of you, the theme today is daily lives. So, how does the teaching and the practices impact our daily lives? And that's the theme for today. So, Hilal?
Okay. So for me, the concept of impermanence has helped me realize that the pain that I'm feeling and the suffering that I'm feeling is not going to last forever. But in the same token, the joy is not also going to last. So it helps me appreciate the good times that I have and stay more present, which is really difficult for me to do, and it's a daily practice. But the concept of impermanence reminds me the pain will dissipate, but also the good times will also go away. So to focus on that. And it's also helped me be a little more patient and realize that nobody is exempt from the Bombu nature. And I thought, how amazing is that? I'm not the only one who's Bombu. Everybody's Bombu. We're all in this Bombu land together. So that's also a teaching that has helped me with my ego as well. And as a CPA and finance professional for the past 22 years, I am used to doing the math on everything. quantify everything, think I can solve every problem, and assume that I have something permanent in this life. But Buddhism has come in and it kicked all these illusions to the curb and helped me realize that I don't control much of anything, which is quite scary, but it's also invited me to be a little more flexible and release a bit of control. Well, okay, a lot of control and letting things flow. Like the ocean analogy that we learned in your class, Tanaka Sensei, to trust and surrender to the ocean, like the sailor. So to me, releasing attachments is not just about Excel spreadsheets or a house or a car or the things we own, but also my attachment that I have to people. So releasing attachments to outcomes, how I want things to turn out in my relationships, and how that's been a really hard thing to do for me, but also the best Buddhism teaching that I have received. I've been using Kisa Gotami's story, which is when I first heard it, I actually cried. I thought it was a very powerful story. And I've been using that because, you know, the Buddha had taught her, and she at the end learned the lesson, why not me? You know, this could happen to anybody, why not me? So I've been using that. When unpleasant things happen in my life, instead of feeling sorry for myself and blaming something or someone, I ask myself, why not me? I'm not special, why not me? I'm not better than anybody else, why not me? And it also helps me not judge people because I don't know what pain they're going through. And it helps me not label them and put them in boxes because I don't know what they've lost. So it's not my place to judge them. Reverend Patty always used to say during during her Dharma talks at BTC, she would always say, when she explains what Namu Amida Butsu means, she would tell us, you're not hot stuff. You know, don't think you're hot stuff. You're not, you know, because that's what it teaches you, right? Don't put yourself up on a pedestal. You have to release your ego. So that really helps me, because sometimes we think that we deserve better. Sometimes we think that, you know, we need to get all these things, but at the end of the day, we're all the same. We're not less, we're not more than other people. We're like on the same plane. So I think that's a very powerful teaching that helps us release a little bit of our ego each day. And that's not to say that, you know, I won't fight or stand up for myself anymore when I need to. I still have that Khaleesi, Queen of Dragons inside of me. I don't know if you guys watch Game of Thrones. So it's helped me be a little less of that. And I don't feel the need to be a warrior every day and react to everything. I'm learning to put down my armor and be a little more patient. I have spent most of my life in that warrior stance, that, you know, I need to protect myself, I need to fight for myself stance. And Buddhism is slowly helping me release that part. I wanted to tell you guys a story that's a great example of this, and it depicts the embodiment of gas. So greed, anger, and stupidity/ignorance. And what happened to me when I was in my early 20s, Buddhism would have come in really handy back then. I call it the Disney Store vault story. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with how the Disney Store used to put movies in vaults way back in the days before streaming was available. They would put a movie, what they call, in the vault. So they won't rent it at the Hollywood Videos or what was the other one? Blockbuster Videos. You can't rent it there. You can't buy it anywhere, and you can't buy it in any store. They put it in the vault so that they can release it years later. And then the sales were like bloom then, because like nobody had the copy. So then it's kind of like a, you know, increasing sales and marketing. So I didn't know that concept existed, which was my ignorance. And then I had a lot of greed and anger in this story. So my favorite Disney movie is The Little Mermaid. And my niece, my favorite niece, who's also my only niece, my niece had turned 4 years old, and I wanted to introduce her to this movie for the first time. So I went to the Disney store on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. I walked in and I asked the sales clerk, you know, I'm here to buy the Disney movie, Little Mermaid. You know, I have my money, I'm ready, I'm excited. And he tells me that he can't sell me The Little Mermaid. And I said, why not? And he tells me she's in the vault. I'm like, what do you mean she's in the vault? Can you please take her out of the vault? Because I want to buy it now. So that's the greed. First, the ignorance. I don't know what a vault is. And then the greed, because I want it now. And then he tells me I can't take her out of the vault. That's our policy. And I got a bit angry and I was getting a little frustrated. And he was chuckling. He was like laughing when I said, I take her out of the vault. So I got angry and I asked him to bring the manager. So I told him, please go get the manager. I need to speak to your manager because you are refusing to bring me, Little Mermaid. So the manager came over and I told him that the sales clerk was very rude to me. He wouldn't sell me the movie I came here to buy. And he was laughing at me. And he patiently and slowly explained to me what it means to put a movie in the vault, that there actually isn't an actual vault where they put the movie in, and I have to wait 4 more months for the movie to be released. So in that moment, I realized my Bombo nature and I started laughing at myself, and I went to apologize to the sales clerk. And that we always tell the story in my family. So that is, I think, a good example of greed, good example of ignorance, and also anger. Immediately, I went into that anger warrior stance and started to defend myself and asking for justice and bring me my movie. And, so in my early 20s, Buddhism would have helped me quite a bit.
Okay. All right. We have 4 other questions, so maybe can we go to the second one?
Yes, we can go to the second one. Okay.
So, yeah, there are a lot of questions I want to ask you about the first part, but let's go to the second one. So do the difficulties become less, or do you suffer less?
Buddhism for me has diminished the suffering, because I've realized that suffering is an option. Like the pain will be there, but suffering, replaying the story in my head and feeling sorry for myself, that's what causes the suffering. So Buddhism helps me carry it better. So for me, it reduces it a bit that way, because I carry it with grace using the Dharma. And I am a big fan of Persian poets like Rumi and Hafiz, and there's some quotes that they have that I use. And one of them says, what screws us up most in life is the picture in our head of how it's supposed to be. So we have this image of how we want things to be. And if it doesn't work out that way, we have pain. And then we tell our story that, oh, this happened because of XYZ. And then we keep suffering because of that. So I think acceptance is the first step towards change. And also accepting that I am Bombo, I am imperfect and flawed, helps me reduce that suffering. So inner change, I think, happens when not when I keep band-aiding my wounds, but when I leave them open to heal. I gave a Dharma talk at BTC a couple years ago, incorporating the Japanese art form kintsugi and relating it to our human nature. So how we are like all broken, and because of our losses and disappointments and afflictions, and yet we are put back together with the golden glue. So the golden glue is the Dharma. The golden glue can be our loved ones. It can be also other power. So those are some of the things that can help us. So the need to protect myself usually puts my ego front and center, and it stops me from growing, and also it makes me want to control things more. So as I release that, and it helps, as I release that, the Dharma helps me transform and release my attachments.
Okay, great. So just to be clear, when we talk about difficulties, it's the horizontal level. The difficulties happen, but you're saying that the vertical, which has to do with whether or not you suffer, that has become less. You're more patient, and you don't, expect certain things to go your way.
Right.
Okay. All right. So third question, in what ways do you feel a sense of gratitude and or joy?
My biggest source of joy, and also what I have gratitude for, is my family that I call my village, and also the journey that brought me to this country. When my innermost aspiration when I was 16 was to come to America. And when I am in a state of scarcity and lack, I remember the abundance I was given. I remember myself in our garden, in our lush garden back home in Ethiopia, wishing to be exactly in this moment I am right now. So I have come so far, not by my self-power, but by other power that got me this far, and also the power of others who got me here. So the village that it took to get me here, all my ancestors, all my neighbors, all my teachers, my parents, my siblings, but mostly.
Okay. Okay, Hilal, you're frozen. I hope you can unfreeze. Oh boy. Okay.
Not so different. Are you
Okay.
there?
Oh, Hilal, you froze for a number of seconds, so I don't know if you can make it so that it doesn't happen again. But anyway, let's move on. I think we got
Can you hear me better now?
Yeah, we can hear you well, and we got most of your response regarding gratitude. Okay, let's go to the fourth one. Do you feel any greater sense of assurance and clarity about what is important and what you wish to do in life? Just for clarity for all of you, is that in the course that we had last year, we talked about how awareness and awakening or shinjin brings about a number of qualities. One is assurance, and the other is clarity. So these are the two, assurance and clarity. And so we're asking Hilal, do you feel any greater sense of assurance and clarity about what is important and what do you wish to do in life? Okay.
Yeah. So in this case, I see assurance to mean not doubting as much.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So the horizontal dimension, what we learned for that class, the horizontal dimension for me is my outer purpose, the things I want in life. I call it my inner toddler that throws tantrums. But then my vertical dimension is my inner purpose, which is how I process what happens to me. And for me, this is like the inner Buddha nature that has compassion for my inner toddler and guides me and has compassion for that. So saying, oh, poor child, there's no reason for you to suffer. You can release the pain and the suffering. So I get these assurances through the Dharma. In the past, I used to always ask myself, what's next? I got my degree, I got my CPA, what's next? I got a full-time job in an apartment, what's next? I traveled the world and I have all these, I have a new home, what's next? So I was always caught up in the what's next question. But with Buddhism, it's helping me ask the question, what's now, instead of what's next. So it led me to reflect and have like a deep presence and asking, what's now? What do I want to do now? What resonates with me now? How can I help my Sangha now? So
Okay. All right. So good. So the emphasis on the now and not so much ask. Okay, you froze again. So, but we got your point about the difference between, always asking for what's next, but now you're much more in the now. And so,
right.
I need to go to the last question, because this is one part that we actually spent a whole session last year, class 8, on engagement. It's basically benefiting others. So how do I practice greater sharing and engagement with others?
Okay, so when I started attending BTC and became a member in 2021, I started greeting the new visitors and showing them around and introducing them at the podium and all that. And we've received a lot of great feedback from people, because most people will come from Christian backgrounds, and then they would feel lost and they wouldn't really know if they fit in. So helping them with that and, giving them resources has helped. And the fact that I'm not Japanese, that I'm a minority, and I'm the one showing them around, and they see me participating and being part of the Sangha has helped them a lot. And a lot of people have become regular attendees from the new visitors, and some people have become members as well. And I also started putting together resources on Buddhism when I first started going there. So I had a list in an Excel spreadsheet, of course. I had a list of books from BCA bookstores, a list of books from BTC bookstore, and I collected links of articles by Reverend Patty Nakai and other Jodo Shinshu ministers that were featured in Lion's Roar and Tricycle Magazine. I put those together, and then also like podcasts to listen to. I started listening to No Doubt by Reverend Takashi Miyagi in California. He presented here in December. And just putting together a list of, resources of upcoming courses and seminars. And I put together a Spotify playlist of Jodo Shinshu chants. And I presented all this to Reverend Patty. And I said, hey, I put these together. I'm using these resources. I think they will be useful to share them with the newcomers who are open to share their email with me, so that they don't feel like the temple is going to send them stuff. I can just, communicate with them directly. So I've been sending those out to them. It's been really helpful. And I regularly reach out to them when there's volunteer opportunities to invite them to volunteer. And also like if there's a new class being offered, so that they stay up to date with that. And in terms of our Sunday service, we have our interim minister, Reverend Fred Brennian, who now does our Dharma talks for us. And he also does the Dharma school messages, and he does the opening and closing for the temple. And I have been doing the other ministerial parts and, ringing the gong whenever it's necessary, and also doing the chanting during each Sunday. And then we have another person ringing the concho bell and the chair, being the chairperson. So we've been dividing that up, having like a DIY type of service at the temple. And another way I've been engaging is also helping set up the altar, and then inviting people who want to, participate to set up. We have 5 celebrations that we set up the altar for. We have a spring Ohigan, Hanomatsuri, Obon, fall Ohigan, and Ho'onko. So we set up the altar. So I help out with that as well. And also we have what we call Open House Chicago, which is the largest architectural event. It's a free festival that offers access to hundreds of sites that have been selected, architectural sites that have been selected by the city. And it includes hotels, churches, concert halls, restaurants, and etc. The Buddhist Temple of Chicago has been selected to participate in Open House Chicago for the past 8 years. And we are the only Buddhist, we're the only Buddhist temple on that list. So we also help out with that, serve tea when people come in and tell them about the history of the temple, etc. So we actually had over 1,100 visitors last year, which was really good. And then a couple other things that I also want to mention is that
Hilal,
because I'm Ethiopian and I want to share my culture.
Can you make it short? Can you make it short so we'll have time for Q&A? Last part.
Yes.
Can you make it
so
short?
I was gonna say
Go ahead.
So I was gonna say I share my culture at the temple as well by making Ethiopian tea, and I'm gonna have like a cater an Ethiopian lunch from a restaurant. So it's another way of like engaging and sharing the culture at the temple with other members, so that they experience different cultures.
Okay, great. It sounds like what you talked about in terms of engagement is others. It's mostly, I mean, you're doing a lot through the temple, in the temple, through the temple, and so that definitely is one way of engaging with others. I mean, sharing the Dharma is one of the greatest form of dana, giving, sharing. So even perhaps even more than material things or money. And so Okay, so let's open it up to discussion questions. Igor,
Yes,
can you try?
Sensei. Yeah,
Go ahead.
we have some in the chat. Let me start with the comment by Denise. She says, "You are a fireball. I'm grateful that you have used your passion and skills towards helping newcomers. Thank you for sharing." Okay, then a number of people, including Denise, Jen, and John Barnes, want the link to resources that Hilal put together. Well, I
Okay.
believe Shin Buddhism
On
resources.
that point, maybe Hilal, if you're willing, you can send it to our committee, and we can send it out to everyone. Okay.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay. And that.
Thank you.
Okay.
And
Next.
then we have a couple of questions from Reverend Kobata. First question: how do you view your family's tradition as Orthodox Christianity? By the way, what does that mean from your Shin Buddhist perspective?
Can you?
So,
Yeah.
how do I view my family's tradition as Orthodox Christianity? So, are you asking what Orthodox Christian means, or how that has like linked?
That is part of the question, yes.
Okay, so this is it's similar to Greek Orthodox, if that helps. It's basically a very similar way of Christianity that we have. So it's an ancient our Christianity basically came from Greece and then also Egypt. We were Coptic Christians, so that's what it means. I haven't really practiced it as much, but that's the background.
Okay. So, Reverend Kobata, if it's Igor,
there is another question from Reverend Kobata. Would you like to continue about the Christianity?
No, I think she's done. So can you ask the second question?
Next, what do you think about the separation between Higashi and Nishi Honganji branches?
Hilal, did you get the question?
Yes, I did. So BTC, Buddhist Temple of Chicago, is in the Higashi.
Buddhist Temple of Chicago is with the Higashi branch, or more or less, although go ahead.
The differences mostly lie in how Pure Land is viewed, whether Pure Land happens when you die and you go to the Pure Land versus where it's here. Like, so for Higashi, we consider Pure Land as being here. Like, we are in the Pure Land right now as we live our lives every day. And that's how I practice it as well. And that's what resonates with me, because it helps me recognize that as I go through my sufferings and try to reduce my sufferings, and I release my attachments. That helps me to know that I am in the Pure Land.
Okay, so that is that the way that Reverend Patty Nakai explained the difference mainly?
Right. Yeah. It's not a place where we go to after we die, but it's just a Pure Land that we can be in. Yeah.
Okay. I personally, myself, if I may express my own view, is that I think the Pure Land can be here, but we at the same time I personally cannot negate the Pure Land after death, because that also is important. So it's it's, one can say the Pure Land is here, but also that Pure Land is beyond death, and it is the expression of truth and oneness. So I think if we cannot complete, well, at least if you negate Pure Land after death, then it becomes far less a Pure Land Buddhist teaching. So
Right. It won't be negating it. If it's here now, it'll continue to be there.
Yeah.
So even
That,
when you
oh,
die,
yeah,
there.
that's
Yeah.
good. That's, yeah, I
But
concur with that.
yeah.
Okay.
So it doesn't, it doesn't negate it. Yeah.
Okay. Igor, any more? We have one from Anita.
We're pretty much out of questions in chat.
Okay, I think I just heard Anita, you had some comment. You'll be better if you can also express yourself, rather than going through the chat. If you're here, so we have more lively discussion.
Yeah, the comment I had is, I think we each have an understanding of the Pure Land, whether it is post-death or whether it is also in this lifetime that we can have it. So I hear variations on that depending on the minister and and it doesn't really have necessarily to do with Higashi or the other. It just the ministers on how they want to present it to whoever it is that they're speaking to at the time who don't know anything about the Pure Land.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that. That's a kind of a complex doctrinal point, but I think what we have is sufficient for most of us. Okay. Please, we have another 5 minutes for Q&A and any comment. Well, if no one's asking question, at the very beginning, Hilal, you mentioned something about in the Orthodox Christian from which your family belongs. There's something about Amida. You said something about Ella. Is Ella means infinite light and life, or are you saying that it sound the same?
No, it's totally different. It means the king of columns or something like that. It's not related to Amida, but I just thought it was interesting that it was the same name.
I don't. That's what I don't get. What's the same name? Amida or
the Amida part? Yeah.
Oh, so in the Orthodox Christianity, you pronounce it Amida.
Amida, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right. So at the beginning, you talked about how the realization of emptiness helped you, and one of the things that the way it helped was that no suffering or the pain lasts forever. You came to that realization. Can you give us something more concrete in your experience, how that helped you, that you're going through suffering or difficulties now, but you realize that, oh, this won't last forever?
Yeah. So I mean, I can relate it to losing my parents. We lost them years ago. But it's something that I keep thinking about, that I suffer through, but as I encountered Buddhism, it helped me cherish the memories better, the memories that we had together when they were here. So even though they passed away 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, it helps me with even old suffering, not even just something that happened recently, but other stuff that I keep replaying in my head. Has helped me realize, wait, this happens. We had a good life. They had a good life. We were with them until the end. So it's helped me even apply it to the old pain that I've had. Yeah.
Okay.
Reverend,
all right, thank you.
Has his hand up.
Reverend Kubata?
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to follow up on the question about the Higashi Nishi thing, because I guess, I wouldn't be that inclined to make such a clear distinction doctrinally, like Ken mentioned. But my question is, coming from a background where you don't have that awareness or experience of these distinctions, that we're both Shin Buddhists, whether it's Nishi or Higashi, that's the base. And then it's a result of a historical development in Middle Age Japan. And so how relevant is it to maintain that distinction here in the West for you?
So the way I see it is sometimes I listen to Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese monk, in his teachings, and sometimes he will include Christianity in that teaching to be able to relate to other people. So he'll say stuff like, the kingdom of heaven is here. You know, you're living in a heaven here. So I kind of see it the same way. For me, it helps me to recognize that the life I'm living now is so precious, and I can see this life as a pure land, as the kingdom of heaven. It doesn't negate that I will go to heaven or I might go to the pure land later, but the way I process it, it helps me better to have that realization that I am living this life and this life is precious. And it's like who was saying that earlier when his mother passed away and she was saying that she can't think of a better heaven than right here, right? So looking at my life here as something precious and appreciating that. So that's how I interpret it. That's how I see it.
Oh, no, I'm just kind of stuck on the point that, we have these institutional differences that are maintained in Japan, but how important it is for us here in the West to maintain that distinction, where potentially for the future in the West, would you, be able to say, okay, we're Shin Buddhists. Basically, we're Shin Buddhists. We're not a Higashi or Nishi Shin Buddhist. And, I think not coming from that background that we were raised with, maybe you might be more receptive to helping develop that. Well, Chicago is kind of unique too, because you have the Midwest Buddhist Temple. So you have both branches in your
Right.
city. So,
Right.
but, in what sense do you think that it'd be possible to bridge that historical cultural difference from Japan?
Okay. Yeah. Well, anyway, this is an interesting discussion, but certainly, ultimately comes down to, we basing our teachings, if you're a Shin Buddhist, on Shinran, and not so much the two branches that developed, much later than Shinran. And so, anyway, okay, I think we got value from the question that the Reverend Kobata posed. Okay, we are now out of time with Hilal, and it's been dynamic and very meaningful. So thank you very much, Hilal.
Thank you.
All right, so we'd like to go to the second half with Reverend John Del Bagno. And Reverend Del Bagno is not necessarily a part of the institution, either Higashi or Nishi, but I have found him very engaging, very thoughtful, very deep. He's written a number of books, and he's a poet. Well, anyway, I'll let him introduce himself for the first 5 minutes. So, okay, John, please.
All right, great. Well, it's thank you for this opportunity to be with all of you again. Just checking, is my sound level okay for you?
Yes, yeah, good.
All right, very good. So I grew up in New York State, about 45 minutes north of New York City, and grew up with a lot of cultural influences. So I really idolized artists and poets. They seemed to be in touch with something beyond everyday life, something spiritual that I was really hungry for. I was raised and confirmed in the United Methodist Church. And through that, the most potent experience I had was my first spiritual retreat with the Methodist Church. And it was just wonderful to be away from daily life and just to reflect on spiritual matters. However, as far as Christianity, I just had so much difficulty in believing in a God that could be so harsh, particularly as seen in the Old Testament. It's interesting, my first Buddha image that I ever possessed came to me as a child through a G.I. Joe action set. Do you know the G.I. Joe military action figure? Well, they had one of these action sets that had a plastic Buddha that was modeled after the Daibutsu in Kamakura, Japan. But the Buddha opened up in the back, and there were secret jewels within the Buddha. And years later, it seemed like a very great metaphor that I would discover these secret jewels within the Buddha that resonated with my heart so much. My first Buddhist influence was actually through Zen. I learned about Zen through the poetry and the writing of the beat poets, Allen Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac, Gary Snyder. And my first Dharma books were by Roshi Philip Kapleau, The Three Pillars of Zen, The Dharma Bums by Jack Kerouac, and then a book by a woman named Marilyn Mountain about her time at Tassajara Zen Center. This was particularly important to me because I didn't know anything about Buddhism and thought it might be a dead religion. And so I had found this flourishing in my heart with Buddhism, but I didn't know if I could actually practice it. So then when I went to college in Boston, I came across the Triratna Buddhist order. And this was the order that I was eventually ordained into. And I was the one of the founders of the San Francisco Buddhist Center, which is the Triratna Center here in San Francisco. My first contact with Shin was when I came out to San Francisco. And like many people, my first time, it didn't quite take. Pure Land didn't quite appeal to me. I was still very much a young, kind of arrogant youth and thought I could do everything and I can do it all. So I spent 30 years doing the self-power practices. And I was making good progress. At that time, my great hero was Padmasambhava, the great Indian siddhi or person who has spiritual powers, who brought Buddhism from India up into Tibet. He was always smashing through demons and difficulties and overcoming things. And I became pretty proficient at overcoming my faults and such, but eventually I did hit a wall. And I couldn't go around it, over it, under it, or smash through it. And I found myself having an emotional breakdown because there were also some other factors going on in my life. A girlfriend of mine who I was in love with had been unfaithful, and my mother suffered great mental health problems, and she had broken off contact with me. So I really had a total crisis and emotional breakdown. I can even remember being curled up in a ball with all of that pain and not knowing how to move forward. And this is actually the experience that turned me towards Kannon Bosatsu, Kuan Yin, as they speak of her or him in Chinese. I really needed that loving energy more so than the Padmasambhava smashing through difficulties type of energy. So that really helped my heart, helped heal me. And in order to celebrate, a year later, I went to Kamakura, Japan to do the 33 temple pilgrimage associated with Kannon Bosatsu. And it was during that visit that I felt that I was spiritually introduced to Amida Butsu and to the Pure Land Way. The following year, I returned and I did the pilgrimage route on Shotoshima, the 88 temples. And then the following year, I came back and did part of the Shikoku pilgrimage as well. And I just must say, the Japanese people were so very kind to me and encouraging. And it kind of blew my mind that people could be so encouraging about a spiritual adventure, because it's so hard to find that spiritual resonance in the society here in America. I had the great good fortune to live for 9 months at a meditation retreat in Spain. And those were some of the happiest days of my life. It really felt a little bit like the Pure Land because the camaraderie towards spiritual depth rather than just shallow talk, being conscientiously kind to one another, living simple lives, and being open to pure wonder. While they were meditating, I would be reflecting on the Pure Land or reciting the Nembutsu in my mind myself. And then I did take 2 6-month periods, and I lived in a van living in the national forests in the Pacific Northwest. And I spent that time just engaged in Nembutsu practice, especially reciting the Nembutsu to the mountains, the rivers, and even to the highways as a blessing for all the spirits and all the people of this land where Buddhism is so very new. I did speak with my teacher, the Venerable Urgyen Sangharakshita, about my practice of Nembutsu, and he was very supportive of other power practice. Yet I really felt that I was going forward totally in the Pure Land way of practice. And so I did resign from that particular order. And now I just try to, I don't teach necessarily, but I like to communicate my experience of Amida Butsu through my poetry, through my painting, and my other artwork. So what I'm trying to do is really just share my relationship with Amida Buddha. So that's my introduction to myself.
Okay, so thank you, Reverend Dale Bagno. The first question, how do your lives or your life change through a Shin Buddhist way of life?
Yes.
Or Pure Land way of life? Yeah.
Yes, very much so. I think the main way is just by giving me perspective. I now see the struggles of life as but temporary inconveniences happening to me along my journey towards the Pure Land, rather than a problem being huge and overwhelming and really winding me up. I can put some perspective on it and say, this is just another little bit of turmoil on a much longer journey. Also, I'm a foolish being with gratitude for Amida accepting me exactly as I am. And if all beings are foolish, well, then shouldn't I try to accept them exactly as they are? So it's really helped me to not judge people, to be less critical of people. And in the same way that, we might give extra attention and extra patience to a child with special needs, having this new perspective allows me to give all the bonbus of the world a little bit extra patience. And then I'd also like to say that we can look upon ourselves much more kindly as well. Self-hatred is one of the most potent negative states of mind that we can have. And since Amida accepts us exactly as we are, we can accept ourselves exactly as we are. And we can love ourselves much more. And as I said, I was a bit of an arrogant young man, and that has certainly changed in my later years now. And I think it's through this new relationship with Amida. And if I might just take one moment and read this poem about how I changed from doing the self-power practice to the Pure Land practice. And it's called Amida's Vow. I climbed as high as I could on the rope of meditation, but my efforts frayed, and all my hopes for enlightenment fell down. I trust now in Amida's vow. It is a rescue cable looped around me, drawing me upward. The way to the Pure Land has opened. Enlightenment is again in my future. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. All right, let's just I'd like to go to the second one. Do the difficulties become less, or do you suffer less?
I would say that I come down on the side of I suffer less. I suffer less because I have a truer perspective on life and on the natures of worries and what those worries do to my mind. I also suffer less anxiety because I can always turn to Amida Butsu. I had an incident when I was just starting to bodyboard. That's a form of surfing, but you use a shorter board and lay on the board. And I was out, it was sunset, and then the night came, and I was still out there trying to catch some more waves. And this big wave came and crashed on top of me and sent me about 10 feet of water down to the bottom. And I realized that this is where people drown. If right now, if I lose control, I'm going to drown. But instead, I turned my mind to the Nembutsu, and I had reliance on Amida Buddha, but also reliance on my wetsuit that it would pop me back to the surface. So rather than panicking, I turned my mind to Amida, and that allowed me to survive that incident. That incident also gave me perspective on financial matters. I had a brand new wetsuit, and I had dislocated my shoulder in that incident. So when I was in the hospital, they were trying to pull off the wetsuit to save me, to save my expensive wetsuit. And it was so painful. I said, no, cut it off. Just cut it off. I don't care about the money. So, and then again, I'll just reiterate that point that we can turn our mind to Amida with our thoughts and our worries. That's that.
Okay, thank you. So in what ways do you feel a sense of gratitude and or joy?
I feel so much gratitude that I've got a path that nourishes my heart, that gives expression to the spiritual nature I feel within myself. And especially after having suffered periods of despair and even self-destructive behavior. As I said, Amida gives me an answer to self-hatred as well. The Nembutsu, I apply it as if it were a healing ointment. I sort of splatter it on my self-hatred as soon as I notice that that has arisen again. Also, I know that in Amida's eyes, if I make mistakes and I'm unskillful, he doesn't hold it against me or withhold his love. In fact, he extends even more love to those persons who are the worst amongst us. And I find that this fact gives me a lot of joy. I also appreciate the historic joy that people took. I think of Ippen Shonen and his followers did sort of ecstatic dance with the Nembutsu and Kuya Shonen. So I have been known to be reciting the Nembutsu to myself and dancing around my apartment. So that's another way that I express that joy. So that would be that.
Okay, thank you. You probably many of you noticed that Reverend Dale Bagno has a broad perspective of Pure Land, not just Shin Buddhism, but he just mentioned Ippen, who was a Pure Land Buddhist who did not belong to Honen's group or the Shinran's group. And so I felt that he is an important person to listen to because he has a broader perspective on Pure Land Buddhism. And I think it's helpful in appreciating and understanding or putting into perspective where Shinran is coming from. Okay, so number 4, do you feel any greater sense of assurance and clarity about what is important and what you wish to do in life?
Yes, yes. My dream was always to live a deeply spiritual life. Even back in my early Christian childhood, I was very drawn to the character of John the Baptist, who was very much closely associated with nature and a precursor of Jesus. And then I also had this dream just to be an artist. And if I had to do some work, to do some sort of job helping people. And so now I help run a retirement community and I do my arts, but also the sense of assurance and clarity about my suffering, that I have accessed the means to end my own suffering, and to have that assurance that that will end, I believe, when I die and enter the Pure Land, has given my life such a richer feel to it. Our mind can spin so many stories and dramas, and our society and our cultures can send us so many confusing messages. It's really a relief to have the clarity of Shinran and the other teachers of Pure Land. Also, when I had begun meditating, I really took to it like a duck to water, and it gave me a sense that I had done this before in a previous life. And out of that experience, it really gave me confidence in the Buddhist teachings. And so for me, that experience gave me confidence in the Pure Land teachings and a certainty of Amida's power. So,
okay, thank you. The last question has to do with greater sharing and engagement with others. And you've already alluded to this some degree, but can you focus on that, the engagement part?
absolutely. As I said, I'm part of a team that runs a retirement community, and we lose about, I think last year, 2023, we lost about 24 residents in 1 year's time. And it is my role to work with people as they change from one level of care to another, and to work with the grief of the families. And I don't think I would be able to do this work if I didn't have uh, the background of Pure Land and Amida Butsu in my heart. At times, the suffering and the pain of the people is even more than I can manage myself. So I sort of turn that over to Amida Butsu, that this is pain that I can't process, as it were. And so it's a very dynamic relationship, I feel, in my work with the other people in their suffering, and meeting people in the place of suffering, getting older, that they can't avoid. And they find a lot of reassurance in myself, just the way I am and who I am. And I wouldn't be this person if it wasn't for these teachings. And then I also engage with people, of course, through my art and my poetry. And rather than say anything more about that, I'll just read a short poem here as well. We are here afloat. We have been thrown unceremoniously into the sea of human experience. Adrift now for a very long time, we are here afloat in the far reaches of what people call normal. Some of us are drenched in addiction, others tossed about by swells of bitter mental health. And sadly, so sadly, many are drowning in loss and grief. Oh, Amida, send your light upon us. Let us call your name in clear tones or gravelly voices. Bring us some small bit of the Pure Land now, for our own bad karma has us by the throat. Dreams and aspirations have become soggy, and sunk away to the depths. But despite what we have done, Amitabha, despite what has happened to us, still you come to save all who call your name.
Mhm. Well,
So,
beautiful, beautiful.
thank you.
And I can see that it comes from the heart and from your experience. The reason why I asked Reverend Dale Bagno, especially because I think he has a particular take on Amida and Pure Land. So I would say it's much more tangible, much more concrete, and in a sense, much more literal, you know, and this is kind of a departure from other Shin teachers who tend to be more theoretical, more, regard Amida Buddha as symbol, or even Pure Land as a symbol, whatever that means. And I think it's good to have a wide range of interpretation, so you can have a very personal or even anthropomorphic, a person Amida, not just oneness. I have a tendency to go a little bit more to the symbolic side. But I appreciate what Reverend Dale Bagno has to share, because he brings in the real, well, I would say very devotional, person-centered kind of way of looking at Amida and the Pure Land. And earlier we were talking about the Pure Land, is it here or is it after death? But if you read Reverend Dale Bagno's poems, it's very real. Pure Land is real, and which it has to be, and whatever real means. But I think that he presents us with a very important, I would say, a balance in our tendency to make it more logical. And so in this, in our session, we have, a whole range of perspectives. So what is important for each of you is to come up with your own taste, as we say, taste. We have the teachings, but unless you develop your taste, it will never become meaningful. And Buddhism is much, very tolerant in allowing for the whole range of tastes. So we hope that you don't feel too hesitant to develop your own appreciation or taste. And we heard from today, from Hilal and Reverend Dale Bagno, their tastes to their appreciation and understanding of Buddhism. Okay, so let's open it up to Q&A. So, Igor?
Great.
Let me read another comment from Denise. She says, Reverend Del Bagno, I'm grateful for your vulnerability and your share. You show great joy in discussing your experience with Amida Buddha.
Oh, well, thank you very much. I'm happy to share of my life to inspire others.
Thank you. Shannon has her hand up.
Thank you so much, Reverend. And
Hello.
hi. And Sensei Tanaka kind of just touched on this at the end too, which was super helpful for me too. But I really appreciate the way you shared about your relationship with Amida, and it is it's different than I've heard before. Which felt really nice to me. And I just wanted to bring up, I'm new on the Buddhist path, about 4 years. And when I came into Shin Buddhism, I had already been a part of a spiritual program that it's very important to have a higher power. And for myself, I've done a lot of contemplating and self-reflection on this, but I've always kind of felt, even though this spiritual program with a higher power and being a Shin Buddhist are both very open and loving and empathetic, I've seen them as two separate things that I've been trying to kind of bring together, if that makes sense.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and I just appreciated like hearing the way you spoke, because it felt like, even just in your work, like I work in a drug and alcohol treatment center, so I'm around a lot of pain a lot. So I turn that over to my higher power, but like I also connect to Amida, and I'm wondering your thoughts or perspective on if that can be the same thing, instead of having a higher power and my relationship with Amida, if those could be kind of melded together, if that makes sense.
Yes, yes. No, I think it's important to be looking in the deepest part of our own hearts and seeing where your relationship to what you're calling a higher power and Amida is coming from. I suspect if you look at it long enough, you'll find they're coming from the same place, you know? But I also always like to say to people starting out on the path, remember that doubt is a natural function of our brain. We evaluate, is this berry tasty or is it poisonous? Is it going to kill us? So we doubt the next berry that we're going to taste, you know? So when you have doubts arising, my experience is that doubts seem to be very up here in the mental, in the higher places. But if I come from down here in the heart, that's where I get my assurance about my relationship with Amida. At some point, we have to take our deepest self and turn that over to Amida. And then you really start to see no difference between the two.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Because
Okay,
that's
great.
where, yeah, I feel it intellectually, it goes like this, but
Right.
when I feel it, it goes like this.
Yeah. Trust
Yeah.
that.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yeah.
We have a couple more, Sensei. So, Reverend Kobata wants to know in what tradition was Reverend Del Bagno ordained in?
I was ordained in the Triratna Buddhist order. It's started by the Venerable Urgyen Sangharakshita, Mahayana, if that means stuff to anything to you folks as well. And he does a combination, very strong self-power, mindfulness meditation, metta bhavana. But then as people get ordained in the tradition, it sort of opens up to some more other power. So that's the way I would explain it.
Just to kind of add to that, Sangharakshita is a British, originally a British person who started this, in a way, a new, in my opinion, a new tradition. And I have met a number of people like Reverend Dale Bagno who are very impressive. Some have gone on to write on Pure Land Buddhism, and I found them to be very sincere and thoughtful and very well read. And so it's not a huge, organization, but they have a number of very dedicated and capable followers.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So
let me, can I read another one?
Yes.
Reverend Kobata has a comment which for me connects with the question that Christopher posted. So Reverend Kobata says, I don't know about taste, but beseeching Amida sounds dualistic in a theistic sense. And then Christopher asks, Reverend Del Bagno, what is the basis of your conviction that samsara will end at the end of this life?
Yes. I would say the basis of my conviction was that I had actually accidentally poisoned myself at one point and had gone through a near-death experience. And it was very much, for those who have read the Bardo Tadal or the Tibetan Book of the Dead, I experienced many of the things that were described in that book as I was dying. And I was met by a white figure that to me appeared to be like a white Tara or a Kanan Bozatsu sort of figure. So I have a personal experience of relating to a figure beyond this world. And that gives me the conviction in Amida Buddha. And so while it may seem dualistic in a theistic sense, I am using it, it's coming from a personal experience that I've had.
Okay. We have more, a little bit, we have another 10 minutes. On this point of dualistic or non-dualistic, and maybe some people will perceive Reverend Dale Bagno's understanding to be more dualistic, which in the eyes of some is a kind of a no-no, but I think that, Buddhist teachers that I knew and whom I respected, they had both perspectives. One minister whom I respected said, I asked him this question when I was much younger, and he said, in times of real need, that we tend to look at Amida as a person or more like a dualistic fashion. And because you are in need of someone or something that you can rely on, but when we're more, without much suffering, when things are going well, hunky-dory, then we tend to look at Amida more in an abstract way or more symbolic way, that it's a manifestation of oneness and all of that. But he said that, in ourselves, we have two dimensions or two ways of looking depending on our life situation. And I think that's true. And in I talked about Professor Miyagi, who is one of my main teachers, and he was a specialist on early Buddhism. He was well known in that specialized field, so he was more abstract or more logical, talking about early Buddhism. But he had a very deep commitment to Shin Buddhism and Amida Buddhism. So whenever he used to come up to IBS to lecture, I pick him up at the airport. And the first thing he went to the altar at the IBS, the Institute of Buddhist Studies, the seminary, and he would, put his hands together and he would be, speaking to Amida, and he would say something to the effect that, here I am in Berkeley, came up from Los Angeles, and this weekend I'll be teaching a class. I want to do my best so that when I see you in the Pure Land, I will have no regrets and that I have done my best. And so I saw that every time, every class. And, so that's the devotion. And I think that is real. I mean, and so, okay.
Yeah. And I might say that we were talking about how we each have to choose our taste.
Yeah.
In a way, we're each choosing our foolishness. I don't think any of us are going to really know or comprehend what the truth is.
Oh.
And so I think at some point we have to dedicate ourselves to a certain line of foolishness,
Yeah.
to put it that way.
Oh, well, that's really a great phrase, Our taste has to meet our foolishness, satisfy foolishness. And and we're not, waving our flag saying this is it and this is the right way, but I have to have this is the way I have to think because this is the best I can do. And okay, that's really eye-opening to hear that kind of expression. Thank you.
Yeah. And also, I've seen so many people coming to the end of their lives. We have to be preparing for that ourselves. And so, in those moments, what is going to give you the most strength to face that moment when it does come? For myself, I'm so grateful to be able to have this very strong devotional nature to rely on, which it can be like a muscle that can be developed amongst anybody. So for myself, if I was just thinking of Amida as a concept, I think I'd be a lot more afraid facing my end.
So, so if it's not, Amida is not a concept, so in your appreciation, is Amida you see as a person, extraordinary person? How do you, how concretely, how do you
Yeah.
perceive?
Yeah. I like a being or an essence. I like to lean on the science fiction and science when we're talking about this, like the theories about parallel universes, other dimensions. I think if we let our minds roll around these concepts and then apply that to Amida and the Pure Land, it's easier for us to digest, particularly as Westerners coming from Christian backgrounds. So I do find it very inspirational in that way.
Mm.
Mm.
So, in a way, when you say essence, it seems more conceptual, no?
I'm more like a amorphous being
Um,
because I'm thinking of Amida with the light coming out throughout the
mm,
universe.
mhm.
So it's that sort of essence. And when
Okay.
you look at some of the science, they talk about the particles that are passing through us all the time that we're not aware of. I think of Amida's light similarly, that it's passing through us all the time, but are we really opening our heart to receive it?
Mhm. Do you associate Amida with nature? Like, uh, because nature, we can all kind of, with five senses, kind of get a sense of that. And then I know that some people, and I do to some extent, that Amida is expressed through nature. And how is
Yes,
that?
yes.
Yeah. Mm,
Oh, yeah, very much so. Those 2 6-month periods I spent living in the forests,
mm,
I was sort of immersing myself in the vastness of these beautiful scenic places and that sense of almost too beautiful for my heart. And I
mm,
look at Amida that way as well, almost too beautiful for my heart to bear.
mm,
And so I do look for Amida throughout nature and that warmth and the impression of a vastness that
mm,
exists when
mm,
our minds tend to focus very, very narrowly if we don't
mm,
pay attention.
mhm. You also talked about self-hatred and how
Mm,
Amida's
mm.
compassion working, alleviated or resolve that. Can you say how did that work? What was it?
Yes, yes. If I might, I've got a poem. Oh, I can't find it at the moment.
Hmm,
I was going to talk a little bit about it. I was going to read you a poem about that.
yeah.
Basically, we can pour the Nembutsu into our mind at any point when we start to feel a negative emotion like self-hatred.
Mm-hmm.
On a very basic way, our mind can really only focus on one thing at a time. We can flip back and forth between thoughts extremely quickly, but
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, it's one thought at a time. So if we get in that habit of coming back to the Nembutsu when we start feeling self conscious or self hatred or
Mm-hmm.
disappointed in ourselves, we can make a conscious choice to go for refuge to Amida Butsu in those circumstances.
I know that you place great emphasis on the Nembutsu, and so you actually recite Namo Amida
Oh,
Butsu.
yes, and I've gone through periods where I've even tried to do the continual Nembutsu throughout the day, and I've done that for a number of months at a time. But you know, the mind gets distracted, and now I just try to. I'm in the habit of reciting the Nembutsu and coming back to it, and I'd like to talk about it in terms of picking up the habit of reciting the Nembutsu, adding that into your life.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. We are now at the end, and let's give Reverend Dale back. What?
Anita had her hand up.
Oh, okay, Anita.
During the happy hour, their Nirvana hour. I'll ask my question.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you, Reverend Dale Bagno.
Thank you.
Okay, so Anita?
Yes. So this concludes our February fireside chat. We hope that you found it instructive and meaningful. The link for the video will be sent to you in the next few days, along with the questionnaire link. We feel strongly that reviewing the video will enhance your learning as well as your ability to respond to the questionnaire. Again, please try to respond within 2 weeks, as the comments will be posted anonymously for us to gain greater insight into the many perspectives possible. If you still have questions, as I do, and are interested in further discussions with our speakers, Ms. Hilal, Tamrat, and Reverend Del Bagno, you'll have the opportunity in a few minutes at our Nirvana happy hour. You're cordially invited to join. However, this is not mandatory. It's strictly optional. And when you do come, don't forget to bring your most favorite wisdom water with you. So those joining us, we're going to have a short 5-minute break, and we'll be right back soon. For everyone else, we'll see you at our next fireside chat on the theme of Pure Land, which is going to be Saturday, March 23rd for most of you, and Sunday, March 4th, the 24th in Japan. Until our next class, please stay safe and well, and Nirvana Hour begins in 5 minutes.
Okay. All right, we'll see you again in March. Take care.